Shabbat Shalom. We chose this weekend because for Kulanu across the globe, because it included the story of Abraham welcoming strangers into his tent. And we gave out a Devar Torah for people to use around the world that talked about welcoming communities around the world into the Jewish tent. But then I started to think about whose tent is this? Is it our tent that we're inviting them into? But my experience has been how welcome I have been in the tents of the communities that I have gotten to know, and how much they've taught me about being Jewish. This weekend, an example, part of this has been that we've developed a community around the world now of people who support each other across communities. We have someone from Zimbabwe teaching someone in Nigeria how to apply for a job at Camp Ramah, and they ended up working together there this summer, and goes on like that. I love the fact that when I have a birthday or anniversary, or when I go through surgery, I start getting greetings on Facebook when it becomes that day in Australia, and I keep on getting greetings till the day ends in California. One example of this caring sadly happened last week when I got a message from this amazing rabbi that we've just gotten to know from the Philippines, a community that recently approached us and asked to work with us. And he wrote to tell me that his community, which is scattered, includes people who live near the shore, and the weather predictions, they're saying that there may be a huge earthquake coming and that there may be a tsunami. He didn't ask me for anything. He just said, I've told these people that they should, my congregants, that they should pack emergency bags and be ready to evacuate, and reassured them that if they did need to evacuate, they'd be welcome in his area, in his home, for refuge. I wrote back that his congregants and their neighbors would be in our prayers. And I know that message from me meant a lot to him. How do I know that? Because in 2001, when I just visited Ghana, I had visited Ghana in June, and the day after 9/11, I got a call from Ghana asking whether my family and I were safe. And I knew it was not easy for people in Ghana to make an international call like that. And I have not forgotten that message, that call, to this day. It meant so much to me. This weekend, as you know, we're celebrating Kulanu across the globe. There are more than 50 congregations and schools on 5 continents that are celebrating with us, although many of them are ahead of us and have finished already because of the time difference. One of the things that excites me about that is 2 of our friends in Nigeria went around Nigeria, where there are probably 72 Jewish congregations, getting groups to sign up who hadn't known Kulanu before, but as a way of teaching people and encouraging them to connect with Kulanu. And 23 congregations in Nigeria signed up for Kulanu across the globe. And one of these men who were reaching out came to me and said, many of the communities I'm reaching out to don't have electricity or internet, and so all the wonderful materials you posted on the internet to help people plan this program won't be available to them. I have a little publishing company, and I would like to publish a booklet about Kulanu so that they can prepare their own programs. And so he made, my printer didn't do as well as his publishing house, but he made 400 copies of this booklet and sent 20 to each of 20 congregations. he got them delivered all across Nigeria, and I asked him how we could pay him, and he asked us for 7 copies of the Art Scroll Siddur, which we shipped last week in appreciation. And we got yesterday a picture of children in a school in Nigeria all holding up their booklets and having made signs saying, "Congratulations, Kulanu." He also had some of the schools do competitions for the children, quizzes or something like that to show what they learned about Kulanu, and he made certificates for the winning children. And if you like, I can show you pictures of how that came out. My first experience with Kulanu was in 2001, when my daughter, Margie, now a rabbi, went and taught in Ghana for 4 weeks. And Ken and I went to visit her for the last week of her trip. And I hope you can help imagine, after a long day, about 7 hours of traveling from Accra to Sefwi-Wiaso in the western region of Ghana, we dropped our bags in our room in Joseph Arma's house and rushed over to where Margie was teaching her daily class to the children. And there, in a small room in someone's home with an ancient blackboard and a little piece of chalk, Margie was teaching 22 children ages 2 to 15. And she was telling them a Bible story. They were illustrating it on little pieces of paper. They were practicing Hebrew words. And then they were singing many songs. They all knew all the words with lots of hand motions. Then all of us marched out singing, "Pharaoh, Pharaoh, let my people go," into the yard where the goats and chickens joined us. I was so inspired in that community that I found myself singing Adon Olam with the children as we walked down the road and looked at the beautiful scenery. While there, I also learned that I had something to contribute in Africa. I had worked in lower income communities in the United States, in the Southeast Bronx and New Haven, but it had never occurred to me that my skills might be useful in Africa. But in that 1 week, we helped them organize a co-op, get a bank account, or have an organizational meeting, and also start the challah cover business that you all know about. And since then, we have sold more than $50,000 selling challah covers and these beautiful tali tote. The ones you see in the room are for sale. Another community that I have worked with since 2001 and dearly love is the Abba Yedaya Jewish community of Uganda. We've been singing their music this morning. I visited 5 times, and now we have the great pleasure of having Shoshana Nambi, who's the first woman rabbinical student from Africa, studying at Hebrew Union College, and she and her 10-year-old daughter Amuna are living with Ken and me. And the pleasure of having Africans who cherish their elders living in your home is an experience that's constant delight to us. Shoshana and Amuna will be here later, and they cooked the rice and beans some of you enjoyed last night, and they actually did my job of cooking the peanut stew that I was supposed to make for today. In Uganda, we've been involved in many projects over the years and have raised about $100,000 a year to send to them. But the one that's been the biggest project is the school that supports, that teaches and feeds 400 Jewish, Christian, and Muslim children. And in terms of what we've learned from these communities, one of the great lessons from the Abba Yedaya is how to live in peace with Muslim and Christian neighbors. The children and the parents and the faculty at that school play together, respect each other, work together, and accommodate each other's religions. So the school makes sure that the Muslim children can go to services on Friday, and the Christian children can go to services on Sunday, even if they're boarding at the school. I had the privilege of joining a team that went to Madagascar in 2016 in response to a request from that community for us to provide conversions. Kulanu respects the choices of communities about whether they think they're already Jewish and don't want to convert, or whether they really want a conversion. And even when we organize conversions, we make it clear that they can't count on all people in the Jewish community or in Israel accepting these conversions. But for many, the conversions are important to them anyway. A moment I especially remember is when Tuvia, one of the leaders of the community, when on the day near the end of our visit there, when we were giving out conversion certificates, and we asked people to comment, and Tuvia talked about that when he had the hatafat dam bri, when they took a prick of blood as a symbol of circumcision for people already circumcised, that he felt he was having a covenant with God. And he was really inspired by that moment. I think it's rare for us in America. So often in America, we go to a Brit and the Moel tells jokes, and just helps us over our embarrassment. But the sense that this is a covenant with God was a real lesson to me. And the next day we had, because couples that have converted formally to Judaism then need to have a Jewish wedding, we had 12 weddings at once, which was a great day for all of us. The Lemba in Zimbabwe trace their history back to ancient Israel. In contrast, I didn't mention that the Abiyadaya chose Judaism 100 years ago. They are Jews by choice, and they are celebrating their 100th anniversary as we celebrate our 25th. But the Lemba trace themselves back to ancient Israel, and there's both historical and DNA evidence to support their story. And they have been practicing Jewish Lemba practices all these years, including kashrut, circumcision, and many other practices that are similar to ours. They were worried that they were losing their culture as their young people moved to the cities and got involved with the internet and modernization. And they felt that the way to sustain their culture was to connect to mainstream Judaism, from which they had been isolated over the years, and asked us to help them. And we, in 2013, brought Modreck Maeresera to the United States, and then when he went home, helped him found a center called the Harare Lemba Synagogue in the capital city that has become a residence, a community center, a synagogue, an internet cafe, and it has behind it a big farm area for a vegetable farm and a chicken coop, many chicken coops for a chicken business. Recently, and as I mentioned before, Elaine and Irwin were the first American visitors to spend a month with that community. Recently, though, as you may know, life in Zimbabwe is terribly hard right now, and the electricity was down to 12 at midnight to 5 in the morning. They didn't have electricity the rest of the time, and the water had dried up in the community taps, so that all their vegetable garden was dying, and it was very hard to keep the chickens alive. we came up with the idea of working with them on bringing solar power to the Harari Lemba synagogue and to build a borehole behind the synagogue so they would have water. And miraculously, we discussed this at the end of August, and within weeks, we contacted some of the donors who knew them well and asked for their support, and we raised about $17,000 and have already installed the solar power and built the borehole. And in spite of the chaos around them, they are able to function better. But we're still really worried because there's likely to be a drought this winter, and we're really worried about starvation in the community we work with. And Jack Zeller, our founder, is particularly close to this community, and he's quite a scientist. And he really was worried that the vegetable garden wouldn't provide the carbohydrates needed to keep our community alive. And so he and Modreck, Maeresera, came up with the idea of developing the farmland in the village Modreck comes from. We had already done some work in developing that area, and another $25,000 plan that would allow them to grow potatoes and beans and send them to Harare so that they could avert starvation. We've raised much, but not all of the money needed for that project, and are optimistic that that will solve the problem, at least for our small community, although, of course, we're terribly sorry for all the neighbors. The water, by the way, the borehole did provide a tap for the neighbors. It is being shared, but the food won't be able to be. But we're hopeful this will work, although we fully understand all the risks to potato growing. And by the way, the reason they didn't decide to grow corn is that the government has banned transport of corn. If you grow corn, you can only sell it to the government grain board. You can't send it to your friends in Harare. So you may want to ask, how can you help? You can visit any of these communities and experience their amazing hospitality and spiritual fervor. You can volunteer, as many of you already do, either from home or overseas. You can help us make connections. You may know a potential donor or a foundation or someone with expertise that might help the communities we work with. And especially you can donate, because all of this work takes money. It's taken less money because I've been volunteering my time and my home as our office, but we all assume that I'm mortal and that someday I won't be able to continue doing this, although I'll do it. I feel like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I'm not retiring anytime soon. And also because we keep getting new communities, and the communities we already work with continue to have needs, but it's always expanding. Financial support makes a huge difference, and we make very good use of donations. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you to all the people. I don't want to name anyone because there's so many, I'd leave someone out, but to all the people who've made a contribution already. And Shabbat Shalom.